And now, AM 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Well, good evening and welcome to Experts on Call here on AM 650. I'm Sterling Fox, and this is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. My co-host, as always, is Tony Juventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and Vancouver Province condo columnist. Evening, Tony.
Good evening, Sterling. We got a little bit of excitement this week
in
Strata world.
That's right, and it's good to have Adrian back with us. Adrian Murray is a Strata lawyer who practices in White Rock and who has been a frequent visitor to this program, and it's wonderful to see you again.
Well, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me back.
Well, it's great to have you, and especially, as Tony just said, this has been quite the week. We've had this case, and Tony, you and I have talked about this case in the past. So let's just take a moment and a few seconds and give us the background behind the appeal court decision this week regarding the forced sale of a strata, of a condo in Surrey.
Well, it basically evolves around the behavior of an owner and her son who lives with her, and the circumstances that occur with respects to confrontation with owners and their attitude towards other people. And it became really heightened as a conflict between all the parties because it just basically made living in the strata unbearable with these people around. There was so much confrontation, and there was yelling and swearing, and just the ongoing behavior that occurred just went on continually. So the Strata Corporation went to court to get an injunction with respects to complying with the bylaws, not causing a disruption. That was not complied with. The Strata Corporation then went back to court to attempt to force the sale of the unit through to Supreme Court. That was then granted at that point, ordering the sale of the Strata lot, and then it was appealed by the owner, and today the decision came out that the Supreme Court decision ordering the sale because of the circumstances was upheld.
Right. And Adrian, good to have a legal opinion in the room when we talk about a very important case like this. As I understand, the decision by the appellate court today said something about the ability to compel a sale being paramount in terms of a weapon for the courts to have to be able to use in extreme circumstances like this. They upheld themselves in the course of the decision.
That's right. It's a huge decision, I think, for British Columbia and Strata. But I think what an important point of this decision is that it's effectively a two-step process. And this is what the court gave us today. They will uphold the sale in order to sell the Strata lot, but that's not the first order that the Strata Corporation can get. The order to sell has to flow from the fact that the owners have not complied with a previous court order.
Okay, right.
And so it isn't possible for a Strata Corporation to walk into court and get an order immediately that someone sell their Strata lot because of their behavior. The first order that you have to get is an order that they comply with the bylaws, and then if they still don't want to comply, the court recognized that there's nothing left but ordering the sale.
But Adrian, Tony and I had this conversation over a year ago, and at that time I can recall being just absolutely perplexed that it had taken, to that point, 2 years for essentially nothing to happen, aside from the incredible frustration of all of these owners in this strata who were still being put off by the lone wolf, if you will, and her son. How come it takes so blinking long to get some? Imagine trying to live in that condo unit or next to those people for the last 3 years.
No, absolutely. It's a long process, and it's a long process in all aspects of the judicial system. So the delays to get to court and the delays that people experience aren't limited to Strata. We see that as one of the big issues in the legal system today.
Okay.
But again, I think it's important to understand that it does require, given our legislation, it does require that first order. So now, how fast you get into court, you're going to have to show a pattern of behavior that doesn't respond to fines, and that was the big issue, I think, here initially. $30,000 in fines, as I
there was
recall.
a stack of money in uncollected fines. It really sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back ultimately.
So
right.
fines weren't going to do anything to change the behavior, which is really what you're hoping for initially. So now you need a court order. That it takes 2 years, that may be a function of all sorts of things, including the unwillingness of the strata to move forward in a quick fashion.
Okay,
so,
that's also
so
possible.
it's not impossible to get to court a little faster on these types of cases.
So Tony, for condo owners right across British Columbia, and you're the executive director of their association, what's the takeaway message from this whole extended procedure and that finally resolved today?
Well, I don't think anything was necessarily resolved in as much as it just reaffirmed the essence of the legislation that under extreme circumstances that strata corporations can take some very serious action.
Right.
This clarified now in the legislation from the court's perspective that acting reasonably on reasonable circumstances, a strata corporation can take what actions are necessary to protect their communities. It isn't just about behavior owners. Think about it another way. It's not your right to disrupt or destroy the lives of all the other people that are living in your building. But some people seem to think it is. And, you get somebody who's moved into a unit or inherited a unit and they're a drug dealer and they have alcohol and drug dependencies and there's all kinds of problems, and you have the police visit the building on a regular basis, and there's fights and there's parties and there's noise,
right.
All kinds of issues. The impact of that after a while starts to have a huge negative impact on your property. Property values drop. People won't buy or buy units in the building. You can't sell a unit.
Right.
A lot of other things get disrupted through the cycle of this. So, it's not just this type of behavior that this application is going to be important for. For the individuals that really are behaving in such a way that it is diminishing and destroying communities, it's an alternative. It's a viable alternative.
Adrian,
But it does come down to behavior.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, in the essence. Yeah.
How frequent is this? I mean, it sounds, we're spending a little bit of time on this on the opening of the show because it's receiving a ton of coverage. Is this that rare that the courts will actually say, you, with Condo 105, you're out. Goodbye?
Well, it's rare in the sense that this is, as far as I'm aware, this is the second time. There was actually a previous case that didn't make the press, but this is the first case. As a circumstance, is it rare? No, I don't think it is. I think that in my experience with the practice I have, I've had numerous clients that have had issues where we had one individual who had mental health issues. We had the SWAT team lock the building down on 4 different occasions in the last year.
Okay.
That's huge. I mean, that's got a huge impact on, as Tony's saying, the lives, the marketability, sometimes the insurance deductible because of the different claims that these people have precipitated or caused, have raised the insurance deductible amounts. So it's got all sorts of impact. And I think that what this does is make stratas now realize that it isn't hopeless. There's a process. Follow it and follow it to the T from the very beginning, which means documentation. And I think that's a real key in stratas. They'll complain about it, but they won't actually do anything about it. These issues have got to be documented, recorded, perhaps videoed, whatever you need to do to record what's going on. You need to be enforcing your bylaws by issuing the letters, levying the fines, and then at the end of the day, if the fines aren't being paid or the behavior is not changing, now you've got something to take into court.
Right. And Tony, I just have to tell you, every account that I've read of this decision, yesterday and again today, in websites and newspapers and the whole bit, every account begins with the Tony Juventu preamble. When you live in a strata, your home is not your castle. It is shared space.
Absolutely. Any type of strata, you are sharing facilities, you're sharing assets, you're sharing property, you're sharing walls and elevators and doors. And as Adrian said, we end up with a situation where we've got a person who caused countless claims that resulted in insurance claims in a building. We have one right now we're dealing with where the strata is now up to a $250,000 deductible. all caused by a series of incidents by this person over the last 6 years.
Oh, okay.
And another incident has now occurred. And the Strata Corporation will likely not collect this money ever. It's going to come out of the pockets of the owners because there is no equity left in this unit. So at what point is enough that, the Strata Corporation can do something about it before this individual is really allowed to destroy the lives of all the other people?
Well, I was just going to say, and Adrian, because you're a Strata lawyer, and a lot of your clients are people who are disgruntled owners in buildings where this behavior issues are occurring. And they end up, as Tony just said, they end up actually carrying the can financially in some cases where, for example, insurance rates get increased because of increasing numbers of claims for serious matters. That's a direct hit to the pocketbook of everybody else in the building, and they've done nothing.
That's right. There's a direct hit financially from insurance claims. There's a direct hit on legal bills. There's a direct hit on reduced marketability, reduced value.
Right.
So it does have a huge financial impact. And, maybe the positive side of a case like this is that people, there will be people who this isn't going to impact at all. They're going to continue to behave the way they behave, and they're not going to change their behavior notwithstanding the outcome of this case. But
Right.
you may have some on the edge who start to realize that I am going to have to bring my behavior into some sort of an acceptable norm within this community, or I'm going to end up possibly facing the consequences of an order to vacate.
And I guess in terms of the individual homeowners, when there are these events that cause insurance rates, Tony, to go up, and you just take the hit. There's no recourse for you, is there, aside from standing up and railing on at Strata Council meetings once a year? I mean, what else can you do?
Well, the Strata Corporation may commence a court action to try and recover this amount of money from the individual. But it isn't, even if they go to court and they get a judgment for it, it isn't going to take a priority over things like the mortgage on the property.
I guess not.
Or things like strata fees and special levies. They're going to come off first. So, strata corporations might find they're levying all their owners with respects to this insurance deductible. But, the impact financially and just the lifestyle and community impact can't be underestimated. So while people say this is a drastic case because they're really, this is a dynamic step to force somebody out of their home. Well, while it is their home, it's not their castle.
Well, that's right.
That's the underlying problem here.
And there are other people like me who are just appalled that it has taken so incredibly long. And by the way, if you've been watching all of this and maybe perhaps have some thoughts on it, our lines are wide open. This is a live broadcast tonight, and the number is 604-280-0650. What do you think about this bizarre case? It was in the Guildford area, wasn't it, Tony?
Yes.
And it has gone on forever. And if you're, I would think, as you cite examples of behavior, both of you, Adrian, of course, with your legal experience, this happens all the time. It's one of the big reasons people call you all the time.
Well, not to the extreme,
well,
but
that's
certainly
sort of belligerent extremes. But still, people are having difficulty coexisting with neighbors in many cases, right?
that would be a way of putting it.
I thought I could handle that pretty well. But really, when you have these frictions that escalate and to the point where lawyers get called, is that when people call you? Is it frivolous? Do they say, oh, there's the next door neighbors, smoking on the balcony, and it's a non-smoking building, and I can't get the Strata Council to do anything about them. Can you send them a letter and say, butt out, buddy? Or is it that lightweight, or do people wait to call you until there's something really going on?
Well, most of my clients are actually the Strata corporations.
Oh, they are? Okay.
So it's the Strata corporations that are calling me saying, you've got to help us enforce the bylaws against this individual.
Right, okay.
And it's, firstly, I wouldn't say smoking on a balcony in a non-smoking building is particularly frivolous. I think it's quite significant. But having said that, we've got issues where people have removed bearing walls without permission, without permits, without advising anyone. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the Strata's recognizing that there's cracks in the walls and cracks in the ceiling.
Right.
That can be very significant. The owner isn't going to let the Strata in. They're not answering the letters that they've gotten. What's the Strata going to do? And those, I'll get those calls as well. So it's the full range of of conduct within a strata.
We had originally planned, because Tony, when you and I got together by email a week or so ago, we were going to spend a lot of this program talking about strata councils coexisting with their managers, their property managers. And we'll get to that, but want to take some phone calls here. Not in the least bit surprised that this Supreme Court or appeal court decision today causing this family to be tossed out of this condo has created a bit of a ripple. So let's take some calls. Art, let's go to Dan in New West here. Dan, thanks for waiting. Good evening.
Hi, I hope you can help me with a couple of questions. I'm in New West here. I'm a member of the council,
Okay.
council, and I'm just at a wit's end to figure out exactly how I can negotiate with the companies out there for a good contract that'll get me the services I need for the strata.
Oh, you mean you're shopping right now for good property management
yeah,
companies?
I'm shopping. I've gone through a company here where we've had, in the last 30 months, the last count was 8 property managers.
Okay. Now, okay, Adrian, you deal with property management companies all the time. So what would be some good questions for Dan to have at his fingertips when he's shopping and to ask of prospective property management companies?
Well, there's a lot at play. I mean, I think that when you're looking for a good company, one of the things, Dan, that you've mentioned is the turnover in staff. And that may be where you want to start with a company and ask them what their practices are, what their turnover has been, what their retention rates are. As you're probably aware, the contract that is entered into by the Strata Corporation is entered into with the brokerage, with the management company. And it's the management company that is able to choose which individual is going to service you. It's, in my view, not at all practical to try and restrict the contract to a particular individual. So to say, well, we'll only have this contract if, Bill Jones is going to provide the services, because Bill Jones may quit, he may lose his license, there's all sorts of things that are going to happen. But if you start with asking the company about their retention rates, their turnover, that may be a starting point for you if that's your major concern. The other thing I'm going to encourage all strata corporations to do is to not assume that the contract is drafted in their strata corporation's interest, and possibly get some legal advice on the terms of that contract.
I have a standard contract in my hand that Tony brought along. It's just there are X's and O's in places in terms of names and individuals. It's just a blank. And so I've had a chance to look through. It's about 15 pages long, Adrian. And as I'm flipping through this before we went on air, Adrian looks over and said, that's a standard contract. That's the standard arrangement, the template agreement between a strata like Dan's and a property management company. And it is totally stacked in favor of the property management company. So perhaps, Dan, if once you get to the point where there might be a company to do business with, you would talk to a lawyer and make sure that you don't get the standard contract, that you actually draw up a document, Adrian, that defines everyone's commitments to the agreement a little more closely.
Absolutely, and it's as simple as sitting down and saying, all right, what exactly do we need this person to do? When are they going to do it? How are we going to measure it? Contracts can be somewhat intimidating. Put the contract aside and let's just start with a piece of paper and talk about what the jobs are going to be and who's going to do them.
All right, Dan, thanks for your call. Hopefully we've been a little of assistance for you here at 604-280-0650. Lines are wide open. This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata on AM 650. In studio, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and Vancouver Province condo columnist, Tony Giaventu. Adrian Murray is a lawyer, strata lawyer from White Rock. I'm Sterling Fox. Lots more still ahead, including more of your calls right after this.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.